Hi, everyone, and a massive welcome to a very exciting episode of Security News Hacker Edition here on InfoSec Live, where we're going to be joined by Chip Harris, who's coming on to discuss all things security news with no holds barred. So if you're easily offended, please turn off now. But if you're intrigued and you want to hear more and you want to get involved in the Ask Me Anything, stay right there. My name's Simon Lindstedt. I'm the founder of the InfoSec Live community. And before we get started, sharing stories and best practice over the last few months has led to over 45,000 views and 8,000 hours of our content being watched on YouTube by you, our amazing subscribers. So a huge thank you for your engagement. And if you'd like to support the wider InfoSec Live community, or indeed buy me a cheeky decaf coffee, we do have a few ways you can show your appreciation. First up, the ability to purchase super stickers in the YouTube chat if you'd like your question bumped up to the top, and 3 tiers of membership allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. And if you want swag, we've now got you covered with a brand new YouTube store open. Link is at the top of the page right here. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. So if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We want to make these as interactive as possible, so make sure you drop any questions in the chat. After all, it is you, our audience, who makes these events so special. So without further ado, I know you're all gagging to hear what Chip has to say today. Let's bring him on. Good morning.
Good morning, and good afternoon to those over on your side of the pond.
Absolutely. And a quick hello to everyone in the chat. There's loads of you in there. See some regular faces. Alana, good to see you. Richard, Stephen, Kumar, Leandro, Dominic. If I've missed anyone, apologies. And if you've got any questions, please do drop them in. We had immersive beats in there as well. I knew I forgot someone. But Chip, before we begin, for those who haven't had the opportunity to hear you speak live before, they may be wondering why you're wearing a mask over your face. Any chance of elaborating?
Sure. Well, the government sent me a new NDA this week, so it's like, be nice, don't talk about stuff that's top secret. Coming live from the nearest Chinese spy balloon next to you, here I am. And the reason why I wear this mask is I was actually doxxed by China and the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, because I did some investigational work for the United States federal government with some 3-letter agencies and some research fellows. And in the process of that, that information got leaked out on the live internet that I was doing that. And I got served a red notice by Interpol for my arrest and deportation back to China, which my lawyer was like, that is not going to happen. We are not going to take somebody that is a national and deport them as a foreign national to a
So
communist-based country
no
to
holidays to China on the
no,
horizon.
no, like your food, good stuff, but you know what? I'm not fucking going. I mean, it's as simple as that. They're like, you would be tortured and killed and all these wonderful bad things. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, that is the reason why, I wear a mask, because they have great facial recognition software and geolocation programs. That's the reason why I hide behind 2 firewalls and 7 proxies, and have rotating IP addresses and multiple things to protect myself when I am on the public internet.
Well, thank you for explaining that. And let's dig straight in, because you approached me about doing this show because there's so many things in the news at the moment that both you and I, 1, find intriguing, 2, find frustrating, and 3, find, quite honestly, quite terrifying. Where do you want to start? What should we start with?
Oh, there's a whole theme park of rides that we can jump on today. Well, one is, what is it? We're not even 90 days, into the year, and we've had, here in the United States, we've had for most people that don't know me, I deal with IT and OT cybersecurity. So I deal with, your servers and your network administration and IT issues. And I also deal with OT, which is operational technology, which is, everything from SCADA controllers to power, water, light, water treatment, rail, transportation, as well as nuclear. So I deal with a lot of, everything from pipelines. I mean, you name it. I mean, that's the kind of the gambit, for the company that I work for. They handle cybersecurity in within those realms. So we've had our first Chernobyl-like event, in Ohio with, a train that derailed, which is basically, just toxified everything that could have been completely prevented, if we had sensors, that watched every 10 miles to make sure that the train tracks don't overheat and cause the derailment, and well, there you go. I mean, it's just, we've had spy balloons. Let's see, what else have we had? Oh, we've had our first, national cybersecurity policy that came out, which is total crap. Yeah, the list goes on and on and on and on. And then we've seen, Petya non Petya that's coming back. We've seen a whole theme park of different, hardware and BIOS attacks that we're actually seeing, as well as, hey, the United States federal government is banning TikTok, so your senators and everybody can't do the hokey pokey, for their campaign ads, and so forth. So you know what? As I tell people, the shit just keeps getting more real every day.
And what do you think is the biggest threat that I mean, just let's stick on infrastructure for a moment because it's no different here in the UK with aging rail systems, aging water systems. I mean, you name it, everything's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
running out of steam, needs updating. It's a massive problem.
right.
What are the big areas for concern in the US at the moment?
Well, we have in the U.S., one is, first off, OT is quote unquote the biggest glass house that we live in. We have taken the internet, and we have plugged that into those things. Normally has not been monitored or done that way, for years and years and years. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's got its benefits, but it also has, its risk, lots of risk. And we're dealing with 30-year-old technology here. I mean, you look at the computer, the fucking car and truck have been around longer than computer, and those things have really not changed. The blueprint for making a car really hasn't changed. Now the design has, but same thing here. The design and the standardization of electricity and water and dams and everything is pretty much about the same. But we've got to update those and get those more modernized, and it's just crumbling, to pieces. Everything from rail, nuclear, I mean, you name it, and it is literally what I call a green paper problem. We have got to spend our way out of this issue. The two examples that I give of that, a failing infrastructure is, one is the Jackson, Mississippi water system that has been completely neglected, for over 30 years, which is just as bad as Flint, Michigan's water was with lead in it,
Yeah.
and you've got people down in the United States, one of the richest countries in the world, that could, that says we can damn near do everything, but guess what? We can't fix a water system. We can't fix a water system. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, it's not that hard, but it is when you look at it for logistics and you look at time and manufacturing. I mean, it's not like you can go to the hardware store and buy this kind of stuff. It's not like you can go to Walmart or Fred's or anything, or Dollar General or Dollar Tree, and go buy a water system and water treatment facility and just put it in the ground and make it work. I mean, it doesn't work that way. You've got new piping and infrastructure and filtration and all this kind of stuff that's attached to it, and that costs taxpayer money, not just a little money, a lot of money. And, these things take time. You're talking a 3 to 5 year period to change some of this stuff out. So, same
Is
thing that
is
we
a
saw.
lot of that due to the painfully slow system that you and both us in the UK here have when trying to get things through Parliament or government doesn't help?
Well, it's a lot of it's government, a lot of it's politics, because the state is not working with the city very well, and they actually have an arbitrator from the federal government that's come in and said, all right, assholes, whack, whack, everybody play fair, and then you've got to go through, government vendors, and the paperwork process, and this red, boulder of red tape that you have to cut through to make sure you get bids done correctly, and, and the time for that. And I mean, it's a process. It's a slow process. It's not like, snap and it's all done. I wish it was, to where they can say, okay, like in a natural disaster, okay, we're going to bring FEMA, which is our government entity that comes in and deals with disasters and handle stuff. Everything with government is a slow going process. It is A plus B equals C. It doesn't change. It's very static. It's very long, drawn out, arduous process. I wish it was faster, but it's not. So, when they say, okay, we're going to, crack ground and take that golden shovel and dig it in the dirt, in 3 to 5 years, boom, you might have the beginnings or the starting thereof a new water treatment facility or a new nuclear power plant. And these things always go over fucking budget. I mean, these things always take time. There's always a stopgap. There's always a problem. Oh, and now let's put it on the internet, to monitor everything. So I mean, it's a very big attack surface. As I tell people, and it's getting worse because this 30-year-old, basically infrastructure was not meant to be put on the internet. And as we modernize these things, we start putting these things on the internet, but we don't bake security into those systems. So, it's one of those things where it's constantly a turnover of old going into new, but in the process of doing that, we put it on the internet and, fuck IT security. We don't really give a shit about risk or, the management of thereof, or, oh, we just plug and play, and just, woohoo, we're on the internet. Okay, walk away. They don't come back and relook at, oh, this could be attacked because the vendor hasn't updated this thing in 10 years. And guess what? We just put it on the internet and it's, so old we can't rip and replace it because it's part of a 24/7, 365 system. And once we plugged it on the internet, there's tons of vulnerabilities and, oh, it's not behind a firewall. And then, okay, that's when the fun really begins.
You'd have thought they'd
And
have done that first, wouldn't you? Let me move
yeah,
you to the
yeah,
top. Let me
yeah.
move you to the top and bring a question up from Mr. Paul Cummings. And he says conspiracy trigger alert with this. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
Oh, I love some conspiracy shit. I mean,
There,
I
there,
love
we,
that
there
Alex
we go.
Jones, the frogs are gay, putting on your tinfoil hat kind of stuff. I mean, that shit just tickles my ass hairs. I love it. It's just so much fun because guess what? Go for it. Let's see what we
Right.
can do.
Here we go. Here's a question. With XIOT being ripe for attacks and botnet friendly, do you think the balloons could potentially be contributed, like wake up calls of devices for the balloons to follow? It sounds worrying, Paul.
Well, we have no. What do you mean? NORAD has the ability of detecting these things coming in the United States from Alaska and so forth. We saw that in 2 prior administrations, these things actually happened and weren't brought to the light of day. And the thing though too is they got caught. They got caught in the act, of doing it, and they never got all pissed off. But guess what? We do the same thing to them. I mean, what they do to us, we do to them.
Yeah.
Out of what is it, 80 something countries, that we're friends with, we still spy on our own friends,
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's, what are they doing over the pond or what are they
Yeah.
doing over the fence? I mean, it's
We just
people
we're just
think.
arguing amongst ourselves over here. You don't have to
Right,
worry
right.
about what we're
And
doing.
the thing though too is they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Now it's not really a conspiracy. It's more of, oh, the public found out and holy shit, we didn't want that to be plastered on NBC Nightly News, CBS, and ABC. We wanted to quietly let it go away and us, shoot it down or take it down and then be able to get this, basically bus out of the sky and find out what the hell they were trying to
So
collect on
why
it,
why did why did we then see a flurry of activity of people spotting balloons? Is that because the sensors were changed to actually spot things that size where they weren't before, or
Well, yeah, because it's a smaller object.
yeah,
A missile is pretty fucking big, and if you're seeing it coming from China or, North Korea or Iran you can see that on the radar because it's got to go really high up to come really hard down and make this nice mushroom cloud, right? So you can see that. That gives you a little time to stop all this. This is a slow moving object. I mean, it's not maybe moving about 3 to 5 miles an hour, when it starts off, and then it might gather up wind speed. But the thing though too is it's a weather balloon. It's not like it just pops up on radar. Depending on what your high low and your what they call a high low and a low low is going to detect. So what that means is there's satellites that fly over at certain cross patterns. That's how we get GPS and we get gridding and mapping out that's done. If it's too high, it'll show up on one. That's a high high. If it's a low low, that means it's going below the radar range. range, right? So that means that radar goes to a higher level, but doesn't, if it's not set to a lower level, to almost a surface level, it's not going to see the gap in between. And that's where that balloon was. So it's flying,
Got you.
at an altitude where it's not up there in the, interscope atmosphere, where it can be detected by high radar and, ground penetrating radar, from the top, versus that on the bottom. So that answers your basic question. And yes, that's how, we look at stealth technology. That's how we look at balloon technology. That's how we look at anything that flies in that troposphere, kind of way. Now, a friend of mine, Chris Roberts, that deals with, planes that fly at supersonic speeds, can tell you those difference, between some of those gaps. But since I've worked in satellite communications and ship to shore relays and telecom, I've kind of learned, okay, there's a sweet spot, that's in between our atmosphere and the ground, that sometimes is just not monitored. So it's not really a conspiracy theory. It's just that if you're not looking for that, you're not going to see that. You know,
And what
we
about
want to
what
see.
about Paul's point about the balloons being wake up calls for devices that are either for new devices to follow or devices that are
Oh yeah.
perhaps on the ground?
I mean, if you want to look at the best spy device ever created, look at your cell phone. I mean, this is nothing. This is nothing new. I mean, we've used balloon technology, for years and years and years. In World War I, World War II, the Civil War. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So, I mean, is it going to be looking for more devices? Possibly so, because we've caused this such a stink about it. That it was not reported before in the past, and now it is being reported. And I also look at it like this. Hell, it might have been just a slow news day. They just had to make up some shit, to make up a controversy to raise the alarm. You never know. Maybe, they were just sitting there just,
What
hey,
what can
what's,
we
the
talk about
chatter?
today? Yeah.
What's the
What about
chatter
this? What
going
about
on?
this question? Talking about government systems, how does HARP do weather modifications, or is it a conspiracy?
I don't know. I don't fucking care. I don't give a shit.
I've got to
If it
Google what
rains,
that
it
is.
rains. If it doesn't rain, I mean, fine. If the government wants to fuck with the weather, let them. I don't
It's always
care.
it's always miserable and cold here, so
Yeah,
they could try and
if
improve that.
HARP is some kind of, global, thermostat, will fix fucking global warming. If that's what if that's what it does, great. But if not, I don't give a shit. I mean, I don't have time to sit there and worry about conspiracy theories like that. It's
There's enough
interesting. Don't get me wrong. I
there's
mean, it's
enough
just
real
like,
ones going on.
yeah, if there was a real thermostat for the Earth, couldn't we fix, our, global warming problem, and, stop making the ice caps melt and all that kind of stuff? Can't HARP just kind of like tune itself to fix this stuff? But hell, I don't know.
I think Immersive Beats' point was that it could be weaponized, which
Hell,
is a
everything
fair
can be
point.
weaponized. Hell, a car can be weaponized.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing as I tell people. You have firearms, not like you do in the UK and everything, but I mean, it's like, I have a 357 Magnum that sits here on my desk, and it's like, okay, gun, kill, kill. Well, it won't kill. The
Yeah.
person behind it makes it, a weapon to where it can kill somebody. And that's the thing. As I tell people, yeah, it's anything can be weapon. Hell, you can weaponize a pencil and a spoon. I mean, it's the intent of what the person is going to do with it, whether it's going to be used for harm.
My wife will tell you that she can weaponize a shopping trolley by putting our 4-year-old twins in it.
Oh yeah, I can weaponize
Yeah.
my kid with giving her a screwdriver and an M1 Abrams tank, and she could tear the thing apart in 2 hours. Trust
You
me. I
you
mean,
can
it's
you
just
can weaponize mine by just giving them numbers and sugar. Right,
get them all sugared up.
let's move on to, you mentioned technology and cell phones. Let's talk about TikTok and why the government in the US have decided to ban that across their devices.
Simple. It's just basically a pipeline of data that is going to run into China. It is that simple. No questions asked. It's a Chinese owned company, even though it has a parent company that's US based or wherever based, but still it's filtering your information, your data, and doing patternization of big data, or what we call big data, or what I call the law of large numbers. You can actually Google that and see what that is. The bigger that you have number wise, the bigger data set that you have that you're able to take that data and then use that for metrics, and quantification. And, you're able to look at certain target markets and demographics and stuff, from everything from spyware down to advertising, down to malware, so forth. And they're like, what's China going to do with this? Well, it kind of gives them an idea of a look behind the curtain of people's lives, and so forth. Because if you go to, other countries, sometimes you don't see these dance videos like you do in the United States. You see in China, when they use their version of it, it's about learning. It's a learning app.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
a educational app. It's telling them more about the weather and so forth, and state propaganda, and that's what they can actually use a lot of this stuff for. And that can, do everything from, influence people, on voting campaigns. They can influence people to buy a perfume. They can influence people to buy a certain car. I mean, it's basically that kind of data that we're freely giving out and not thinking about the consequences that go with it.
Yeah,
And
it's not just TikTok though, is it? I mean,
yeah, it's not just
you,
TikTok. I mean, don't tell me LinkedIn doesn't do it. Don't tell me Facebook doesn't do it. I mean,
agreed.
you look at Cambridge Analytica and you look at some of
Yeah,
these people that actually, you have companies that harvest metadata. That is their business model. And they take that data and they sell that to advertisers.
yeah.
You know, don't tell me
What about
Amazon doesn't do it.
all the hardware that's been bought off places like Amazon and eBay? I mean, I'm a good example of this. A few years ago,
Hmm.
about 7 or 8 years ago, I kitted out my house with cameras,
Hmm.
and I used like the Ring ones to start with. They got expensive, so I ended up covering loads of areas with kind of cheap Chinese cameras that I'd got off the internet. Again, how safe are they, and do we need to worry about things like that?
Well, do you know the make, the manufacturer? Do you deal with, did you change your password? Did you update, the firewall policies, stuff like that? I have a paid for service, and that's what I use for, and the government makes me have that around my house, so I got cameras everywhere, I got sensors on doors and windows and everything. My house is very secure, that including the minefield that's out front with the triple razor wire, and the velociraptors with the razor, lasers that go around the perimeter. Then on top of that, I've got two crow's nests with 50 cows, so I'm good. As I
You're all
tell
right.
people,
I've just got 4-year-old twins, and we let them roam around the
yeah,
garden. Yeah,
I got C4 on trees, and claymore mines friggin' everywhere. So I am set. It's like, okay, yeah, same thing. Your video surveillance system, if it's a CCTV, that's closed circuit, so that means that you don't really have to worry about those things. But since we have cloud-based monitoring services that's provided by some of those companies and so forth, really do your research on exactly what devices that you're putting into your environment, right? Because you might be introducing some kind of vulnerability that you don't know about, to where they could either spy on you, or your neighbor could crank up Wireshark and Kali Linux, and oh, looky here, looky what I found. Let's find out what these IPs, that are broadcasting do, and, as I tell people, even Ring, they had their issues, because people were being able to get into that system through their AWS portal, and people were speaking, to people through their Ring cameras and their Ring systems, and, doxing them, and being, very annoying. And it is kind of, the creepy meter goes pretty high, you
does.
know, when you got somebody that might be able to be spying on you in your most intimate moments inside your house, when you're supposed to have privacy. But yet again, in the United States, we don't have privacy laws. We have nothing in the Constitution, nothing in our Bill of Rights that talk about privacy, at all. And that's something that eventually we are going, like net neutrality that we've tried to address, privacy laws, libel laws. Some of those things are going to have to be addressed here in the United States very quickly, because they're getting old and dated.
They are.
If you
Yeah.
even look at the National Cybersecurity Policy Plan that just came out, it's a freaking joke. We were saying, okay, this is shit that we have talked about for 10 years, and we've made laws and tried to make laws for and tried to enforce, but you have no teeth. You know, the government can't dictate to a state or to an individual, hey, do this. If not, we fine you. It's a lot of, talk, 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 but there's nothing really
Or
behind
as
it.
my late grandmother would have said, all fur coat and no knickers.
That's right. They're going to gum you to death,
Yeah.
and it's annoying, as I tell people, that it's like, oh, please please put multi-factor authentication on your government shit, or please, do this. I mean, there's no enforcement policy that's around some of those certain things.
It's not.
Will that eventually change? Don't know. Let's see how those things turn out. But yet again, when we start talking about some of the actual privacy, where does what I call the creepy line? That's actually a term used in the internet lingo. There's a creepy line that you don't cross. Does government policy, and stuff that actually comes in that says, okay, we're not going to use TikTok because it spies and does all of the stuff, and we're going to stop using it. But then it jumps into the enterprise world, into the everyday consumer world, where it jumps that line and says, okay, do we enforce this on our populace? Do we take this away from the general
Well,
masses?
it's funny you should say that, because in the UK at the moment, I think this is one of Boris Johnson's legacy policies, but they're looking at operating an online safety bill, which in its essence is a great idea, but it contemplates bypassing encryption using device side scanning to protect children from harmful material.
Right.
But what it can also do, I mean, Signal, for example, they came out with a statement, I think it was last week, saying, well, if you're going to do that, we're absolutely screwed. There'll be no point
Right.
us doing it. And then you've got to weigh that up with people's right to have a private conversation compared to privacy rights. Does that make sense? It's
Yes. I
difficult.
mean, do you want Big Brother listening to your phone conversation with
No,
your wife?
I'd be getting
And,
very bored.
yeah, yeah, they would not be. What, honey? What do you want me to get at the store?
Yeah,
Okay, hold on. Text me the list. I think the government could give a shit less about what it is I'm talking about with
yeah,
my wife, but that the idea that's in the back of my mind is this. Okay, we want to ban TikTok, in the government services. That's perfectly fine and dandy. The government has the right to standardize and secure their system for the public masses, right? But then does that cross that creepy line to where they say, okay, in the United States, anything that's, a .gov or .com or blah 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 that's on any of our domain or systems and whatnot, we ban it, for all the carriers, and we ban it as a nation. Okay, that's a very good debate, right? That's a very good thing to talk about, is where if this data goes to a foreign power and they are using this for malicious intent, which I guarantee you they fucking are, is that we need to stop that, because that's considered to be espionage. So yet again, I've said this before, if we can ban TikTok and do all this kind of stuff in the United States, why the fuck can we not find child predators?
yeah.
If we can do all this stuff on government systems and they can do all this kind of cool stuff on the internet, why is it we can't find, pedophiles, or in the UK pedophiles, on the internet? I mean, same thing applies, right?
It's
If you
it's
could
all
do it to
about
one
that, isn't it?
side, yeah,
Resources. Yeah,
yeah, it's it is resources, and it's also initiative. It's
yeah.
also is it the will of the people here in the United States for that to happen? Do they want something like that? And there's a lot of debate and referendum and reform and stuff that needs to be talked about that. But here's the deal: some of these policies already exist. They're already on paper. This is stuff from, like, we have some very barbaric laws
But
from
like
the
you said, they've
1980s and
sometimes
90s.
they've got no teeth though, have they, to back them up?
Yeah, yeah, it's like, okay, the government just can't come, they can fine them, but to some of these major enterprise-based companies, it's a fucking speed bump.
Yeah,
It's a damn, little pothole. They don't care. They'll pay the fine and keep doing it. We saw this with the, Colonial Pipeline. Oh, we're gonna run, the nation's gas system off Windows XP. Good fucking choice, people.
well,
One, and
let me just jump back in the chat, because we've had a couple of really good suggestions for your home security. One, Alana's come up with a great one, which I might implement at home: a moat, which would be very British. If I had a castle, it would work even better. But that could
freaking
also keep my
sharks with
twin.
laser beams on their
I
heads.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's got to be for the moat. I felt that we could fill the
Hmm.
moat with sharks with laser beams.
Or you could do a moat with a bunch of spears in it. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah,
Fill it
I'm
with
thinking about.
acid.
It's a good point. Yeah, none of this is
Yep.
really child friendly for the kids, though, is it? But
I come
okay,
with a warning label, for Christ's sakes.
well, it'll be fine then. Now I'm going to bring this one up from Immersive Beats because a couple of reasons. I'm a little bit concerned with what happens next with the brain interface devices, such as the ones that Elon Musk is developing. And while we're on that, any kind of organically linked device, for example, my elderly mother's got a pacemaker
Same
fitted,
here,
which connects to the wireless and reports
right?
back. Let's talk about the dangers for these kind of devices, in particular the brain interface chips that they're talking about or about to bring out. I think.
I'm not going to have one.
Me neither.
I mean, I don't want somebody to hack my brain, I'm sorry. And I mean, there is a biogenics and bioware community, that's out there. But I look at it like this, and the other thing though too is I also look at this in a very personal way is that, orthopedics, people that have lost hands, arms, stuff like that. If we're doing stuff for the brain, right? What can we do for appendages, hands, stuff like that? Why can't we take some of that interface technology and not interconnect it into the person? So if they get their arm severed off, they're not connecting wires into tendons, but
Yeah,
sensors on, after that person is healed, and they have the removal of a hand. Why is it we're doing this stuff with the brain?
yeah.
And why can't we put this into better, better orthopedics, for people that have lost appendages, legs. I mean, we we just fought a war for 22 years in the United States in Afghanistan, otherwise known as we call now the Forgotten War, because I mean
Yeah.
it's been going on for so long. There were a lot of people that lost hands, legs, arms, stuff like that. Why can't we use that kind of technology? Why can't old Elon go, you know what? I'm going to take all this really cool money and all this cool shit that I've done over the years, and I'm going to put it into making, and grants and funds,
Do you know
for
why? Do you
colleges and
know why?
universities
Because
to do something like that.
he was not quite old enough to have watched the $6 Million Man when he was a
Yeah,
kid. Because it
yeah.
seems like all his other ideas have come off sci-fi programs that he watched when he was a kid.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, a pacemaker, awesome. My father's got a pacemaker. They did a factory recall on his. He had his replaced because the old one that was there, was using an older version of Bluetooth. And it was Java based. And I mean, the Java was hackable, so they could actually hack. Someone could have hacked his pacemaker and turned his heart either up or down or turned it off. So that's bad. And and what's the warranty policy for that? Does your insurance cover that? Or if you don't have insurance, does that cover that kind of, care and service? So a lot of this boils into two things. One is our healthcare system, and your insurance company is your second. What is going to be covered by coverage that you, as the person and individual that your company is applying for, and what they're going to pay for. And the second, though, the two is the actual device itself, its manufacturer warranty. What's it going to be doing? What's it not going to be doing? And how much of that is going to interface into your body, right? So there's a lot of questions that you need to start asking, a lot of stuff that goes in there. This is not like they're putting in a stent or a shunt. I mean, these people are going in there and plugging up your heart to something that's going to either speed it up, speed it down, or keep it at a steady rate. Same thing. I mean, it's just no different than organ transplant. If I had had a liver transplant, I've got the choice between a mechanical one or one that came from a donor from someone that had passed away. There's a debate there. There's something I have to look at, and balance that out in between what's the first off the cost benefit of what it's going to be charged to me, that my insurance is not going to cover and I'm going to be able to pay for. And the
Yeah.
second off is, what is the advantages and disadvantages of either looking at something that's either artificial or man-made versus somebody that has donated something, to the greater good, from either passing away, or someone that has donated, their organs after after they are deceased or have died. So there's a lot of things to kind of weigh on that. And is it an interesting debate? Absolutely. Do we have any laws that govern it right now that say you can or can't do it? Nope, not really. You know,
No, I think we need to get the AI ones sorted out first, don't we?
right. I mean, we can't even figure out how we're going to wrangle in, Chat GPT and all these other things,
I know.
but it's a very healthy debate, especially, if there's someone that might be able to put an implant into their brain to help someone with Alzheimer's, from losing their memory
Yeah.
and their cognition, or someone that's had a very traumatic brain injury or a stroke, those, that's that could be useful. I mean,
I know
to
a
help.
close friend of mine who got Parkinson's. I used to kickbox with him when we were teenagers. He was actually UK champion for about 4 years in a row. He got Parkinson's in his late 20s. And when he was about 10 years ago now, he'd been about 40. He did have an operation on his brain where they inserted some wires in to bypass bits. And I've got to be honest that the initial his initial response to that was phenomenal. I went from seeing him being wheeled around in the supermarket with his wife to him
Mhm.
running across the car park and shouting my name one day, which just blew me away. But it has regressed back. And from speaking to him, the reason for that is lack of investment. And again, it goes back to, David Meese said in there, follow the money and you'll find the answer on most things,
Right.
unless it's down to, or you could link it up to weapon development or anything else that the government are pumping money into. That's how
Right.
we end up with great technology for things that are an afterthought, like people's health, is after we've been designed for the military 9 times out
Right.
of 10.
Military development and space development,
Yeah,
spawn out some really cool stuff,
they do.
like duct tape. Shit, we didn't think about that. That came from NASA. I mean, same thing. Maybe this is a very a very healthy debate to have some of these things. Like, wow, could Elon Musk, that's got all this, one of the most, what is it, the fucking richest person on the planet or some
I think
shit like
so.
that,
Yeah,
can invest into cognitive brain, wetware. That's what, as I call it, from the cyberpunk days, where I'm
yeah,
plugging in, things into my body to be able to enhance, my, reflexes or stuff like that. I mean, or cybernization, turning yourself into a cyborg in a way to be able to do some of that stuff. But would it help with Parkinson's? Would it help with people that have traumatic brain injuries or strokes,
yeah.
or paralyzed limbs, to where they'll be able to help rewire them to use their hands, but I also look at it from this is there is if we took that technology and put it into something like, if you've had your hand completely severed off for an artificial limb,
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that are working on being able to do stuff like that, but it's also really incredibly expensive,
it is.
you know.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
even an artificial leg that's not autonomized to do stuff is still
Silly.
very expensive.
It is
I've
very,
got a
very much
friend
so.
that's missing his left leg, and I mean, he's like going. One day I asked him, I said, "How much does your prosthetic cost you?" He's like, "Chip, this thing was $35,000." And
My
I'm like,
word.
"For that?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's $35,000 with insurance. I don't even want to imagine what it'd be without insurance." I'm like, "Holy shit!"
Well, the way the NHS is here in the UK at the moment. So I had a self-inflicted motorcycle accident 4.5 years ago,
Oh,
and I smashed my I had bone sticking out of my arm. Had my arm reconstructed with titanium, but
ugh.
my shoulder's got no ball and socket, so it just sort of hangs there. So I have to be careful. I can't do this on that side.
Mhm.
I went to the doctors, to the GP, because it started to give me a bit of jip, as we say here in the UK, the last few
Right,
months.
right.
Right. And was put on a waiting list. I got a letter to say that it would be 18 months before I had a response to let me know I was on the waiting list. So when you
Oh,
say
that's
about
nice. Yeah.
going private might be something that I have to look at in the future. But I want to just bring up this comment from Dominic, because as much as we're talking about brain interface devices and pacemakers and all these other things, Dominic's comment's a really good one. Unfortunately, the brain is being manipulated and hacked today. It's called the media. Making it
Yeah.
easier with a chip in the brain is freaking scary. Completely agree, Dominic, with that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get one. I mean, more power to you, but I mean, I don't want a USB plug-in into my fucking head. I mean,
No,
I'm sorry, I just
I don't.
don't.
I would like to
Maybe
speak
that's just
fluent
me. I mean,
Spanish, but maybe I should just learn.
yeah, I mean, why don't I mean, and here's what's it going to do really? I mean, what is the if they said, Chip, we're going to put this processor in your head and blah 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 blah, and it's got X amount of cores and it's going to do all this kind of whiz bang kind of cool shit and whatnot. I'm like going, and it's sponsored by whom? Eli Lilly, Dow, Johnson and Johnson, 3M. I mean, who's making these devices to where they can manipulate me or do something to my brain? And what if it goes wrong? What I mean, what is the do I have to wait, like you just said, 18 months to get on a list, to get onto another list, to get
I
this
know.
removed out of my skull,
Yeah.
or an update,
That's
That's
the
not gonna
thing, isn't it?
work.
And what happens if you run out of money and it needs updating 10 years later? That would be my
Yeah.
my concern.
Or better yet, you leave a company, that has paid for this thing to get in your head, and they say, "I want it back."
Yeah. You
Yeah,
know
I
what?
mean, like, what are you gonna do? I mean, it's not like you can rip it out and give it to them, during your HR, when you're going through your downgrading process and leaving your leaving your company. Like, "Oh, yeah, all that stuff in your head, we want it back." And I'm like, "What the I can't give it to you." It's like,
Do you mind if I share your LinkedIn profile on here in case anyone wants to
"Go
connect?
right ahead, sir. Go
There we
right
go.
ahead."
Right, that's it. Mine's
And
in
just
there.
so that everybody
Sorry, go on.
does know, we are currently working on. Yes, I work with students and educators, and we are working on creating a hack box, which is basically a portable pen testing lab. So that is going very well. It's a GoFundMe. I'll actually be doing an update this week because
Have
we
you
have
got
a
the
lot
link?
of yeah, we have a lot of equipment that's been donated, and COVID is still a very big thing. As I tell people, COVID is not going away anytime soon. Neither is cancer, AIDS, all these wonderful things. So if the people want to donate their computer and CPU and GPU time, there is something that I also, recommend to people that, that's a personal thing to me, which I have been helping on, which is called folding at home. You and I have talked about this before and,
Yeah.
have seen this. Folding at home is basically an installer that you can install on your computer, like on one of my servers I have here that's dedicated to it. It takes its GPU and CPU time, and it helps, scientists and math people that are working in bioscience and science and so forth work on their formulations, which are very big, which need basically supercomputers. So this is a distributed, supercomputer or high performance computing system. So distributed HPC network, and it's one of the biggest supercomputers on the planet. And this is how we used this over a 2-year period to start looking for disease resiliency, and to stop certain diseases, from spreading. One would be COVID. And there's different projects that you can donate your CPU and GPU time. You can sit there and read about them. They have everything from Alzheimer's, cancers, HIV/AIDS, Ebola, as well as COVID-19, or SARS virus.
I've
So
shared the link in the chat if anyone's interested. I'm definitely going to check that out afterwards. We've
yeah,
got
it
we've got a
costs
few
you
minutes
nothing.
left, Chip. Can I just get you to talk about before we go the kind of recent spate of tech layoffs and where you see the industry going next to finish things off?
We see this every 10 years. And I am actually under a FISA court order not to talk about some of the things that the IT industry could do, mostly around unionization. That was something that happened about 10 years ago, and was, basically squashed and crushed by IBM. They said, we will not allow unionization in the IT industry, and here was the reasons why. And they took it to Congress, and they said, we're not going to allow unionization of some IT sectors. And I can't talk anymore about that because a lot of it's classified, under court order. But the current tech layoffs is, I say this, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint of view, you better really make sure you know who and whom has what passwords, because if they get pissed, it is on.
Well, it's funny you should say that. We've already seen activity in the press where nation
Yeah, we
state actors
have.
are approaching people and offering them money for their logons when they see that they've been made redundant. Twitter, I think, is one of the ones who was being targeted.
I mean, the last thing that you want is your company to end up with all their username and passwords on 4chan. I mean, it's
Yeah.
simple as that. And if they, piss off some developer, network administrator, cybersecurity admin, server admin in this layoff process, Microsoft, Google, all these people will put themselves out there to where their own former ex-employees, if they decide to get just, together one day at a coffee shop and said, let's just fuck them up, and here's the username and passwords I know for these systems, and they start turning shit off or
Yeah.
start putting viruses out there, and if that will affect their IPO, I guarantee you, and I mean, they just get together, at a Starbucks and say, like, the shit is on. We are done, with this company. Let's just fuck them up. And that's It's happened before, and people have not learned, since. I mean, Cisco went through this about 10 years ago. They had one of their senior network administrators. Now he's in jail. I mean, he's in federal prison, but he shut off 2/3 of the company and just locked them out because he changed the, secret password to a sentence. So there was no way, with a 512-bit encryption, and basically the password was a sentence that he had made up, you know, uh, to get into their own backbone part of their own network.
Embarrassing.
And then yes, embarrassing. And then he locked everybody out, and then he filled it full of viruses, that he knew of, that they had not patched for on their own systems and not patched for into the public systems. So it's like, okay, if you know that the last thing you want to do is piss off your cybersecurity people, because they know all the CVEs and all where your sins are buried,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, and you're just going to lay these people off. Don't you want to hire more cybersecurity people than fire cybersecurity people?
You'd think, wouldn't you? You would
Yeah, I
think.
mean,
Let's bring up this comment as the last talking point because it's a good one, Jessica Goodwin. Thank you very much for this. I know what my answer is. Would you say it's possible to invent and implement affordable and reusable technology that is disruptive to the money chain without suffering an unfortunate accident? I think the likelihood is you'll get acquired by a big company before you get an unfortunate accident. But what's your thoughts, Chip?
yeah, you're not going to get that very far.
No.
You would definitely. I mean, people. The driving motivation for a lot of development and so forth is about one single thing: money, right? So it's
Yeah.
greed. If I create this whiz bang kick ass app that will automatically heat my coffee cup, and all I've got to do is just download some wireless Wi-Fi, whatever another, to heat this thing up, and it becomes really hot, and you've put it out there on all the social media things and blah 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 blah, and some major corporation says, "Hi there, I'm going to give you bazillions amounts of money and trademark copy and royalty rights to this." Fuck yeah, you're going to jump. Yeah, you're going to sell this thing out. I would, I mean, that's me, you know. I mean, if I could set up myself and my kids' kids, with their college tuition, and make their life a little bit easier, sure, absolutely I would do it. I would sell that motherfucker faster than you could shit out your ass. I mean, I'd be like, yeah, get the lawyers, let's go. I mean, that's exactly what I would do. I mean, that's just me. Not saying that I'm some stone cold bastard that wouldn't do it, and saying, "Oh no, for the generalized public, I would never do such a thing." Fuck
I
no.
think it's oh, here we go. What's this say here? What has Paul said? He's got a tip for us. You don't need an app to warm your coffee cup. Just get a Motorola Razor and turn YouTube on and let it heat up itself. Does that actually work?
I don't
I take it you're
know.
watching this on a Motorola Razor, Paul.
If I remember, the Motorola Razors was a goddamn hand grenade.
Yeah, certainly
They
was.
banned them from airplanes for a reason. Why? Because they would explode.
It's actually my first job on leaving school was selling mobile phones. It was before the Razor days when they were the transportables. I expect you may just remember them, Chip. We're a similar
Oh
age.
yeah.
Yeah, with the big aerial and the big wiry wire for the
I
handset.
had a Motorola bag phone that looked like I was calling in a fucking airstrike. I mean, it was huge. I had the brick phone. It's like, oh,
That's it.
someone's going to assault you. I could literally grab the antenna and beat the shit out of them like a hammer. I mean, those were the phones I grew up with. Now,
See,
phones are no bigger than, I mean, like a little mouse pad, like, hello, I mean, and they're flimsy and they break, and, they got crappy ass glass and whatnot. I mean, and they don't have the best quality control or security that's installed on them. But those were the phones I started off with. I mean, it was a phone. I mean, like a physical almost phone. So that tells you how old I am.
I remember them well. Well, I think I showed on LinkedIn on Friday how old I was by putting a picture on of myself with my first ever home PC, which was a ZX81 Spectrum back in the
I had
day.
a Commodore 64. I mean,
Yeah,
that's how I
I had a
started out.
Vic 20 before my 64, and I remember I broke my 64 because in one of the used to get magazines at the time every 2 weeks that
Yeah.
used to give you hints and tips. Someone said in there that if you carved a groove in your disc on your Commodore 64, you get more memory. I'd just like to point out that it didn't work for me, and my parents were really pissed off that I broke the
Oh
computer.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
had the first computer that I physically owned was one that my dad had given me that he had gotten from work, which was a Gateway computer, and it had, a 17-inch CRT monitor that was literally like you had to be you had to put it on a damn dolly. I mean, it was so fucking heavy and so big, and it's like if I could have thrown this at someone and hit them, it would have killed them. The tower was probably, 4 to 5 feet by 4 to 5 feet wide, had like, physical fans that were huge in it, and whatnot. And I remember the day I decided to do RAID, go from one hard drive and put in another. And I had to sit there and go to billboards and the internet to figure out exactly how the jumpers had to go onto the hard drive to put the stripe in it to get it to do. These kids nowadays are so fucking pampered. They didn't have to research or do any of this kind of shit like we had to. We had to physically do everything, and now they're like, oh yeah, I just plug it up and play, and I just
Do
go
you
get
wanna
the
do you wanna know where
software.
it all went wrong for me? For me, it all dates
Uh,
back to the early '80s when they brought in Video Plus on the remote control. So all you had to do
oh
was put a
yeah,
sequence of numbers in to record your favorite episode that evening. From
right.
that point on, none of us have understood how technology actually works. I
Yeah,
honestly
same
believe
thing
that.
with us when it comes down to graphics cards.
Yeah.
When we were cleaning out my dad's garage, we had all this old just fucking hardware from years back. I found my original Voodoo card that I had in my old, Pentium 2. I was like, "Oh, holy crap, I hadn't seen this in like 18, 19 plus years," And it's like, I don't even know if it still works, but it's kind of nostalgia row, to kind of go through a lot of that stuff and remember a lot of those things.
Yeah, it's
And
nice.
but it shows you how Moore's law is out of the damn window, and how technology, in less than 60 days, 90 days, or a year, just, changes so rapidly, so quickly. And is it getting better? Absolutely. Is the security getting better? Not so much. It's actually getting worse, if you ask me.
Well,
With
it's ironic that the spend on cybersecurity has like trebled or whatever it is in the last 3 years, but we seem to have
Yeah,
seen no improvement whatsoever.
yet again, my statement I said what when we started doing this years and years back, was that you will spend 25% of your net company's profit, on cybersecurity, doing stuff that you will never see. But if I turned it off, everything would just go to fucking hell within a day. you know Imagine if I turned off your Office 365, there would be people literally pissing blood and shitting their intestines after their ass turned to buttermilk. Because they couldn't get into their email, or they couldn't get to Teams, or they couldn't do what. Yeah, it's like, oh my God. And there's now a national day to unplug in the United States. I'm like, son of a bitch. We devolved, it used to be, ooh, I got email, and now it's turned into, ooh, I got email.
I got more
It's
email. Yeah.
just ridiculous. We've taken something that was, simple and easy, and we've complicated and sometimes perverted it, and it, but we can't live without it. We have integrated this so much into our society and our life, we have no other choice. So, and it's not going away anytime soon. You could go out to live out in the middle of nowhere with no technology and blah, 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 blah. That's fine for you. But for me, I gotta, this is my job. This is my career. This is what I do every day,
Yeah.
and I love. And I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't enjoy it and I like it, and I love the people I work with. I love my team. I love my management staff. I've actually, work with some really smart people that do some really smart things, to some people that have made some dumbass decisions on making crappy ass software and security, concerns. Like I tell people all the time, don't click on that. Don't click on it. Oh shit, they clicked on it. Oh, damn it. Come on.
Hey, our last question from
Uh,
Paul. What's your favorite toy for IoT, OT, SOS hardware hacking?
I am still kind of old school, so I still, use Kali Linux. There's a new version that's coming out for it's called, and it's actually a pretty cool project. It's called Kali Purple.
I've seen
And
that.
it's got
Yeah.
some real, it's basically Kali Linux, but with some SOC and SOC and counter surveillance, counterintelligence tools that's out there. And I use probably about 40 to 50 package apps, and I there's a couple different companies, and I'm not going to name them because I'm not, sponsored or anything by them, but
Yeah.
that I use personally here at home, as well as with other different companies that are out there. And as I tell people, it's depending on your network, your system, and what kind of Kool-Aid you want to drink. If you drink from Cisco, that's great, but if, and maybe you want to drink from the Honeywell, or maybe you want to drink from Ubiquity. I mean, there's tons of different brands and stuff that's out there. It's depending on your environment for what you want to do and how you want to set it up, how you want to secure it, and then what kind of connectivity and connectivity that you want to have in and out from the internet. And no system that I've ever run into is set up exactly the same. you know and I use, Kali Linux, I use Parrot OS, I use, package apps, I use paid for apps. So I am not dedicated to one single thing. I mean, I look at it like this: whatever can get the job done in the less amount of time that's going to cause us less pain to get the fix that I need done.
Well, I think Paul meant more. He's put the names down there. RF1, which I think is the radio device, isn't it? Ubertooth and JTagulator. Do you use any of those?
Not right now. I'm actually working with a university right now, Mississippi State University, Michigan State University, and Arizona State University, with some different, devices right now. And there's one that's actually out there that you have to get made, that I like. It's called Wave Bubble. It's actually a jamming device. And the reason why I have one and use one is when I go to the movies, when I turn it on, it jams all the RF signals that are inside the theater, so nobody can talk on their fucking phone while I'm trying to watch a movie. Now, you can call me a dick if you want, but I paid a lot of money with me and my wife and my kid, and a lot of money for popcorn and all this kind of stuff to go watch Ant-Man or Wasp or a Marvel movie or whatever. I take that, I turn that on, and it jams all the devices that are around me so nobody can talk.
I love that.
You get
Right, we're
no
we're out of
bars.
time, Chip. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's, as usual, been entertaining and insightful. So a massive thank you for giving up your time. Any final words before we go?
No, sir. All I've got to say is this: be safe, and be safe with your normal computing. Make sure that you know what you are doing, because guess what? I'll find out.
Love that. Chip, thank you so much for that. And also for the audience, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you've made it really interesting and engaging. If you want to see more, we're back at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. GMT for the vendor experience with Jay and John from Axis. So if you're about later on today, be great to see you there. If not, have an amazing day. Thank you all for tuning in. Catch you soon.